You announced 5 new destinations to your Revolution road trip in April. They're Wichita, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Northwest Arkansas, and St. Louis. Why those cities?
Well, this is our 9th road trip we've done. So far, we visited 43 cities all around the country to shine a spotlight on these rising cities that are becoming stronger startup cities and some of the entrepreneurs there that are building really interesting companies that are trying to break out. Obviously, Silicon Valley is terrific and will continue to be a great center of innovation. But right now, it's crazy that essentially all the venture capital goes to entrepreneurs there, and other places like New York and Boston. Last year, 75% of venture capital went to just 3 states. And a lot of their states, whether it be Kansas or Oklahoma or Ohio or Michigan or other states, all get less than 1%. So we're trying to level the playing field, get more venture capital to more entrepreneurs so they can create more jobs in more parts of the community. We can have more of a inclusive innovation economy where everybody feels like they have a stake in the future and can be part of the future as opposed to just a few entrepreneurs in a few places. It's exciting to see what's happening in these cities. There have been a number of breakout successes with our Rise of the Rest seed fund. We've now backed over 100 companies in over 70 cities, over 30 states, and we're really just getting started. It's exciting to see what's happening out in the rest of the country, not just on the coast.
Well, it wouldn't be a good interview with an entrepreneur if we didn't get some of your top 10 predictions for the next decade as we sort of wrap up the last decade. Reading through your blog, one thing that really stuck out to me was the rise of health and wellness within the startups. I wonder, though, as this increasingly becomes a bigger and bigger theme, how much of this appears to be overvalued, given there has been so much attention already on health, on wearables?
Well, I think you ain't seen nothing yet. Healthcare is 1/6 of the economy, one of the most fundamental aspects, obviously, of our everyday lives, and it's really ripe for disruption. A lot of the focus in the last 5 or 10 years has been on the wellness side of things like wearables, Fitbit, and others, because that's a consumer decides, a consumer pays decision. It's a lot easier to go to market. The real focus in the next 10 years is the core of the healthcare system, what really is a sick care system, and there are a lot of companies doing really interesting things. Ones we backed through Revolution in Chicago, a company called Tempus is using big data, machine learning, AI to diagnose cancer much more effectively, much more precisely, so people know exactly what they're dealing with, and there can be much more of a personalized approach to the diagnosis and then the treatment. So you can see a lot more of that, the convergence of technology to really provide better health care more conveniently with better outcomes and at lower cost.
Another one of your big predictions was more tech backlash. I think the problem here is there isn't enough trust really between the consumers and then the owners of that data as well. How do you get more trust so that there isn't that big backlash that we've really started to see in the last few years?
Yeah, I think there's 2 areas to look at. One is sort of the consumer side of things. Consumers still love their technology, iPhones or Netflix or many other things, but they're starting to get a little bit concerned in terms of what these companies are doing with their data and other kinds of things. They're a little concerned about even the elections because of some of the things happening around Facebook. So they're getting a little more anxious that maybe what they thought was all positive, maybe there's some negative. And as a result, not surprisingly, the policymakers, whether it be here in D.C. and Congress or other places, are saying, this technology does enable a lot of great things to happen, but how do we strike the right balance in terms of managing this? And I think you'll see in the short run, because of this backlash, in terms of including a regulatory backlash, probably a look on the antitrust side. Should some of these big companies, Facebook or Google or others, get broken up? That may or may not happen, but at minimum, I think these companies will be a little more careful about making any new big acquisitions, and that will have an interesting impact in the startup sector. Will open up opportunity, maybe more competition in some of those sectors that right now look pretty locked down by the incumbents.
You also are looking at a continued rise of e-commerce. Does someone come in and disrupt Amazon?
Amazon's pretty well positioned, although Walmart and Amazon are really duking it out. And obviously, they have different strategies, but they're starting to converge. One was physical, the other was digital. Now both are doing more of a bricks and clicks kind of strategy. But that's not the only place to focus. Most of the attention is on what's happening on the direct-to-consumer side of things. There are many companies that have formed, Warby Parker and Framebridge and others also in the last few years, capitalizing on this e-commerce boom. But there's also a lot of great companies that are doing things more on the back end. The consumer doesn't necessarily see it, but companies like BigCommerce or Optoro that focuses on reverse logistics, what's happened when products get returned, or FreightWaves, a company we backed in Chattanooga that's figuring out where trucks should go to deliver the products. So the e-commerce revolution is not just what's happening when you order a product and somebody delivers it to you. It's all the infrastructure that's happening around that, and that will continue to accelerate in the next decade.
Steve, we have just less than a minute, and I really wanted to get your thoughts given we just surpassed the 20-year anniversary of the AOL Time Warner merger. Looking back, if you had the chance to redo it, would you?
Well, I would do the deal, but I would execute the deal a little bit differently. Strategically, what we were trying to do, and it was announced just 20 years ago, was to drive the convergence that we've seen over the last 20 years. We've seen things like Netflix and the iPod and iTunes, other things that didn't exist 20 years ago now become significant parts of everyday life. Those two companies, AOL and Time Warner, together had the potential to do that, but they never worked well together. There was a culture clash, a bunch of other challenges. It's great to see companies like Disney really bring the whole company together in a very aggressive, integrated way to launch something like Disney Plus. I wish we'd seen some of that 20 years ago when we put AOL and Time Warner together. The quote I've used in the past is Thomas Edison said, "Vision without execution is hallucination," and sadly, that's how I think about that merger. Great promise, but obviously it was a disappointment, a big disappointment.